CEO's challenge revealed. Girl's incredible piano performance transformed skepticism into adoption. Jessica sat on the frayed bench of her tiny living room, fingers poised over the yellowed keys of her old piano, a tangled melody echoing her heart's ambitions. The sounds of the bustling Chicago streets swirled outside, a reminder of how distant her dreams felt. As she struck the keys, the music filled the gaps left by poverty. Each note seemed to promise a way out of a worn-down apartment, a bridge to a future that felt like a mirage. Yet despite her talent, whispers of mockery followed her. "You really think you can make it?" they said. The laughter stung, pulling her down into the weight of unrelenting doubt. Each day, her mother worked tirelessly at the diner, late nights spent serving customers who rarely saw her as more than a means for their evening meal. Jessica understood the sacrifices. She shared her mother's resolve, but the shadows of their struggles loomed large over her aspirations. What if she failed? What if the audition turned out to be another link in a chain of lost opportunities? Every time she imagined herself on a grand stage, the confident applause of a crowd filled her head, juxtaposed with the sneers of her classmates echoing behind her. Could she balance the deep yearnings of her spirit against the harsh reality of her life? A collision of worlds happened when an unexpected video surfaced online, one that captured an emotional performance of Jessica playing a haunting piece. To Stephen, a tech startup CEO, this was more than a simple act of music. It was a raw expression of passion that spoke to the emptiness he felt within the sterile confines of his boardroom. Yet, as he watched, a conflict brewed within him too. Could he step away from the numerical success that had come to define him? Every instinct urged him to dismiss it, a distraction in an unforgiving world where profit mattered more than melody. The echoes of his past failures, sharp and unyielding, pressed down on him. What if he reached out and offered support only to have her dreams fall through his fingers like sand? Despite the rising tension of her upcoming audition, Jessica found herself immersed in thoughts of what lay beyond the hourglass of her existence. What if her peers were right? The ridicule rallied in her mind. Yet in the depths of her soul, music thrived like a steadfast ember. As she played, she imagined herself polished, confident, every note a step closer to proving them wrong. But with every practice came new fears. What if she faltered? What if she didn't deserve to want this very much? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that is happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the days dwindled down to her audition, anxiety clawed at Jessica's insides, an unrelenting companion whispering venomous doubt into her ear. Standing before the mirror, she rehearsed her pieces, but the cruel comments of her classmates replayed endlessly, bubbling with the abrasive laughter familiar in the hallways you'll never escape. She returned to her piano, fingers trembling, and faced the hardest question. Could she rise from the depths of despair she often battled against? Could she transform the uncertainties into an anthem of bravery? That final note resounded in the air, a piercing call to arms in a fight she wasn't sure she could win. Time slowed as she realized that the answer lay not just within her music, but in an unexpected intertwining of her fate with a world she had barely stepped into. The ache of their divided lives clung to her. Would this connection transcend or reinforce the chasm separating their disparate worlds? The days passed in a haze of anticipation and doubt, each sunrise bringing Jessica closer to the audition, yet amplifying the cacophony of insecurities within her. The piano no longer felt like a release. It had transformed into a battleground where every note was a soldier that could either win or lose the war for her future. She yearned for solace, for the sound of approval, yet the weight of skepticism pressed down harder each time she sat before the keys. Jessica's fingers trembled as they hovered over the ivory, her heart pounding in rhythm with the unplayed notes. She envisioned the recital hall, a polished wooden stage, soft golden lights illuminating a sea of faces, some friendly, others skeptically raised eyebrows. With every imagined applause came the haunting echoes of her classmates' jeers, a reminder of her past failures. A chain of regret that tightened every time she thought herself an artist. Late one night, as darkness crept through her window, a message pinged on her phone. It was from Stephen, an invitation to meet. "Let us talk about your music." The words ignited a spark of hope, yet a tether of anxiety gripped her. What could a successful businessman want with someone like her? What if his support was flimsy, destined to dissolve when the first note fell flat? Nevertheless, the opportunity swirled in her mind like a beautiful but elusive melody. What if this meeting could alter her course, further intertwining their fates? Hesitation gnawed at her, but the timid ember of courage beckoned to be fanned into fire. She agreed to the meeting, her heart racing with both possibility and fear. On the day of their meeting, Jessica found herself at a trendy cafe that felt worlds away from the muted struggles of her life. Soft music played in the background, a constant reminder of the path she wished to pursue. The atmosphere was electric with conversation and laughter, and yet, she felt adrift, an island of uncertainty among a sea of certainty. When she spotted Stephen, his confident demeanor bolstered her own wavering hope. He wore a tailored suit that screamed success, a stark contrast to her slightly rumpled jeans and threadbare sweater. As they exchanged pleasantries, she caught a glimpse of the man behind the business facade, a man grappling with his own doubts, one hand nervously tapping his coffee cup, mirroring her own internal struggle. "This music you play," he began cautiously, as if choosing his words carefully. "It's different, visceral, connects." His eyes met hers, and she held his gaze. The affirmations she craved surged within her, tempered by the fear of letting herself believe. "How do you know what it feels like?" she challenged, the self-doubt creeping back in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because I once stood in the arena of dreams too," he admitted. "I see parts of myself in you, in the way you turn fears into passion. I think it would be a mistake to ignore that." His words hung between them like a lifebuoy thrown into choppy waters. The prospect of collaborating flickered in her mind, but could she really navigate the currents of failure again? Jessica realized she faced a decision: to lean into the vulnerability Stephen had offered, or to retreat into the safety of her small world, one that limited her dreams but shielded her from pain. The audition loomed closer, its approach like a freight train, relentless and unstoppable. "Come with me to the auditorium next week. I want you to see what is possible," Stephen said, completely unaware of the tempest brewing in her heart. The tension unraveled and reknotted within her. Could she risk everything she had built so far? Her gaze fell to the cup of coffee between them, the decision steeping like the bitter brew. And in that moment, she understood this wasn't just about music or an audition. It was about confronting her deepest fear: being seen. The choice lay heavy on her shoulders, the synergy of their worlds challenging her perception of self-worth. She walked away from the cafe. The stark city streets reflected her swirling thoughts. What waited on the horizon? The opportunity of transformation or the abyss of shame? The stakes had never been higher. Somewhere deep inside, amidst the chaotic shadows, a burgeoning resolution tugged at her heart. Maybe now is the time to confront the echoes and not just play for approval, but to truly believe. But then, the question hung in the air, pulsating with urgency. Would she choose the path laid before her, or would the weight of expectation continue to anchor her dreams? Jessica spent the following days oscillating between excitement and dread, her thoughts drawn constantly to Stephen's invitation. Each random thought of the auditorium sparked a rush of adrenaline, accompanied by the suffocating grip of anxiety. What would she discover about herself if she stepped foot on that stage? The idea of performing still felt like a double-edged sword, piercingly beautiful yet slashing away at her security. Every night, the piano beckoned her, calling for her attention, but even its soothing presence couldn't drown out the mocking voices that echoed in her mind. In quiet moments, when the world faded into silence, she found herself conjuring past failures, the school talent show she dropped out of at the last minute, the withering glances from classmates who believed her music was just a phase. Doubt had become an unwanted companion, whispering like a persistent wind through her thoughts. Yet, there was something she hadn't confronted: her fear of transformation. She spent years damping her own flame, convinced that remaining in her cocoon would save her from hurt and scrutiny. But now a flicker of courage ignited. The deeper she dug into this realization, the more she ruminated on the potential within her. What if this cycle of doubting herself could shift? What if she could play, and not merely to seek approval but as a form of self-assertion? On the day before their scheduled visit to the auditorium, Jessica made a bold choice. She dedicated her practice to one piece, a haunting composition she'd written years ago during a time of personal upheaval. It had lingered inside her, waiting for the right moment to take flight. For the first time in months, she let herself get lost in the music, surrendering fully to the emotion it carried. With each note, she unraveled the threads of her past, transforming anguish into art as she played. She envisioned the faces in the auditorium, some supportive, some skeptical, but she centered her thoughts on her own reflection. She recognized that while others could judge her, it was her own perception of self that truly mattered. The rising cadence of her music melded with an inner declaration. I am worthy. With every stroke of the keys, she painted a picture of resolve and authenticity. That night, sleep proved elusive. Stars twinkled outside her window, mirroring the flickering embers of determination within her. Clarity washed over her, pulling her mind towards what tomorrow could hold. She rose from her bed and pulled her laptop towards her, determined to find out more about the auditorium. As she perused the schedule, she stumbled upon video clips of past performances, each one a testament to resilience and artistry. Inspired, she sought a new perspective, realizing that being vulnerable on stage wasn't merely about risking failure, it was a celebration of her journey. In every performance, artists face the possibility of judgment, but they also embrace the opportunity to connect, to evoke emotion. The morning of their meeting dawned, and she donned her best attire, a rhythm of hope beating steadily in her chest. When she arrived at the auditorium, the soaring ceilings melded with a promising aura, instilling her with an exhilarating sense of purpose. Stephen greeted her with a knowing smile, as if sensing her internal metamorphosis. You're ready for this, Jessica, he said, his voice a steady anchor amidst her whirlwind thoughts. She nodded, emboldened by his unwavering belief in her. In the heart of the auditorium, amid forgotten echoes of past performances, she mused about her artistry, the layers of growth she had yet to unleash, her imminent performance encapsulating not just her skill but her spirit as they stepped on stage. Ready to face the judgment of the world, she understood that it was time to confront the ghosts of her past. But the looming spotlight also illuminated her new path, one of self-acceptance and transformation. Would she seize this moment, or let fear slip away with the rise of the curtain? The moment of truth awaited her, teetering on the edge of possibility. What would happen when they stepped into the light? The dim light of the auditorium bathed Jessica in a soft glow as they stepped onto the stage. Her heart pounded, an urgent metronome echoing her turbulent emotions. What had begun as an invitation was now transforming into a gauntlet of exposure. Every inch of the stage told stories of triumph, joy, and defeats the emotions instrumentalists wore like armor. As they approached the grand piano, Stephen whispered words of encouragement, yet her awareness of the crowd surged to the fore. Each person seated, a critic. Each shadow in the audience felt like a weight added to her shoulders. Breathing deeply, she reminded herself of the promise she had made to herself, to play for her own spirit rather than their approval. Resting her fingers on the cool, polished keys, Jessica closed her eyes momentarily to silence the dissonance within. A connection surged, grounding her as she visualized the piece she had chosen. It was as if a beautiful, chaotic energy enveloped her, harnessing her fears, transforming them into something tangible. She remembered the last time she had stood before an audience, how the ghost of failure had gripped her throat, rendering her mute. That moment taught her the fragility of confidence. But today, something had shifted. Perhaps this performance would serve as both an exorcism and a revelation. The opening notes flowed with ease, cascading like a gentle stream. The music transcended her past, weaving memories of heartbreak and heartache into a tapestry of sound. The audience quieted, the whispers settling into rapt attention, as she played an unexpectedly intimate space where she found liberation. Moments morphed into lifetimes as she traveled through her composition, the delicate mix of rhythm and harmony revealing layers of pain and resilience. Each crescendo mirrored the internal battles she had faced: the fear of judgment, the relentless self-doubt, and the suffocating silence of despair. But now, those feelings transformed with each stroke of the keys, turning into declarations of belonging. As the final notes echoed, Jessica lifted her hands but remained seated, breathless. An inundation of relief washed over her. In that instant, she realized she had overcome something far more profound than merely performing. She had unearthed parts of herself long buried beneath the weight of expectations. The silence that followed was pregnant with anticipation, and for a brief moment, the world stood still. Then came the applause, steady and strong, shattering the buoyant silence. It washed over her like a warm wave, affirming that she was no longer a spectator in her life, but an active participant in her journey. Stephen's voice broke through the applause. "That was incredible, Jessica. You should be proud." As adventure collided with reality, she nodded, caught in a glazed state of disbelief. Was this the moment she had anticipated? The moment that would change everything? Energized yet still searching deep within herself, she understood that this was only the beginning. But the exhilaration was met with a sudden cloud of doubt. What awaited her next? The smile of approval from the audience faded slightly as a new thought crept in. The stage had gifted her clarity, yet the challenge she had faced was not merely performance, it was a promise of growth. What if she could not only play but also invite others into her narrative, shifting perceptions of vulnerability and courage beyond her own? A surge of hesitance gripped her heart. Could she continue this journey? The thought sparked a new question she felt compelled to explore, igniting both terror and excitement. As she stepped down from the stage, a revelation surged. For every performance, there was a deeper call to embrace her artistry beyond a singular moment. The curtain may have fallen, but the stage of her life beckoned for more. What awaited her now as she navigated this uncharted territory? Would she summon the courage to share her inner world or retreat back into the shadows of doubt? The applause faded, but its resonance lingered in Jessica's ears, blending with the exhilarating rush of the performance. It was a newfound sense of belonging, yet a contrasting confusion reigned in her mind. She stood off stage, heart racing and uncertain, acutely aware that she had awakened a dormant part of herself. It wasn't enough simply to play. She wanted to connect, to share her story, to challenge her audience's perceptions of vulnerability. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. In her reflections, she couldn't escape the looming question. How could she weave her artistry into a narrative that resonated beyond personal expression? To invite understanding rather than mere applause demanded a courage she had only just begun to access. Walking through the side hall, Jessica's eyes caught sight of a group of musicians gathered, discussing their projects animatedly. They were older, their conversations bubbling with visions of collaboration and innovation. Seized by an impulse, she approached them, hoping to glean insights into her own artistic purpose. "Hey, I'm Jessica," she said, her voice betraying her nervousness. One of the musicians turned, a woman with holographic earrings and vibrant tattoos. "Nice set out there." "I'm Leah," she replied, welcoming Jessica's presence. "What's your angle? You've got something alive in your music." Jessica hesitated, feeling the weight of scrutiny, yet the power of honesty nudged her forward. "I want to share the vulnerable sides of art, what it means to confront fear and uncover resilience through performance. But I'm not sure how to do it. I've only ever played for myself." Leah nodded thoughtfully, her expression softening. "That's a strong foundation. Consider storytelling through your music. Create pieces that speak to your journey. We often forget how much our struggles resonate with others." The concept of storytelling resonated deeply with Jessica. Combining personal narrative with music ignited possibilities she had not dared to imagine before. The fog of self-doubt began to lift, replaced by a fluttering excitement. Yet, another part of her hesitated. How would she balance the intimate relationship with music and the exposure of vulnerability? As the conversation progressed, Leah shared her experiences of transforming connections and vulnerabilities into collaborative performances that spoke universally. Each word was a thread in a tapestry Jessica yearned to weave a narrative of self through notes, melodies, and shared human experience. Yet, doubt resurfaced. Could she be brave enough to expose her history, her fears? As Leah excitedly laid out a plan to host a recital highlighting personal stories and music, an avalanche of self-questioning crashed into Jessica's mind. What if they saw her as weak? Worse yet, what if they didn't understand at all? Jessica excused herself from the group, needing to process. She stepped into the quiet of the empty hallway, leaning against the cool wall, drawn inward by the conflicting aspirations churning in her chest. The thrill of potential collided sharply with ingrained apprehension. Always one to retreat at the first flicker of fear, she felt the ancient call of safety whispering, urging her to cling to the familiar comfort of anonymity. Yet she had played her heart out just moments before. Hadn't the applause been a testament to her desire for connection? This tension twisted painfully in her stomach. Wasn't it time to embrace the lessons of courage discovered on stage? Perhaps Leah was right. Perhaps the next step in her growth demanded a leap that felt as daunting as the last notes she had played. Hesitating, she recognized her choice point. Would she grasp this opportunity to redefine her artistry, sharing her narrative, or slip back into the shadows where the fear of exposure thrived? The decision lingered ominously, pressing against her resolve. It was time to engage with her narrative, but would she carve out this new journey, or succumb to the familiar silence? The echo of an unanswered question loomed in the air. What would happen if she chose to open herself up, to share her rediscovered creativity with the world beyond the stage? The dim light of the hallway felt both like a sanctuary and a cage. Jessica leaned against the wall, grasping the cool surface as if it could somehow stabilize the whirlwind of thoughts and feelings spiraling through her mind. The afternoon sun slipped beneath the horizon outside, casting elongated shadows through the glass doors, reminding her how much time slipped away when faced with crucial decisions. The pressure of her unearthed aspirations mingled with the tendrils of fear that encircled her heart. Leah's words echoed in her ears like a captivating melody, storytelling through music. Yet, the practicalities of that notion blurred under doubt's weight. What story did she want to tell? And more significantly, was she ready to bring forth the vulnerable chapters of her life to the audience that often only saw the polished performances? Jessica took a deep breath, attempting to ground herself in the moment. She recalled the adrenaline rush of playing earlier, the moment her fingers danced effortlessly over the keys, lost in the euphoria of creation. Such was the power of music if only she could harness it as a conduit for her truth. She had read enough books, witnessed enough heartbreak, to know that vulnerability was powerful. Vulnerability was what brought people together. Yet, confronting that fear seemed monumental. Turning away from her contemplations, she headed back to the group where Leah had spoken of her collaborative plans. Jessica needed more than just an understanding. She craved guidance, a blueprint to navigate the treacherous waters she now longed to sail. As she approached, she blended into the conversation, listened intently, while suppressing the inner critic pushing her towards silence. And it's not just about performing. It's about creating an atmosphere of understanding, where the audience feels invited to relate to your struggle. Leah continued, her passion infectious. Jessica felt a flicker of resolve ignite within her. What if I shared a song based on a personal experience? She implored, her voice barely above a whisper, but it resonated with an urgency that surprised her own ears. As she said the words, she felt lighter, as if a weight was resolutely being lifted. Leah turned, her attention peaked. That's the spirit. If it comes from your heart, it will resonate. Have you thought about your story? What has been a defining moment for you? Jessica's mind raced. An incident from her past bubbled to the surface, an experience that had long remained tucked away under layers of shame and discomfort. Her younger self, terrified of the stage but yearning for validation. The moments of feeling unworthy. Could that, a foundational emotion, be the bridge to her narrative? Before she could overthink, she nodded. I think I might need to write something about my fear of exposure, my struggle with the belief that I am not enough. The admission felt both liberating and terrifying. "Excellent," Leah exclaimed. "That's where the magic lies. That struggle can speak volumes. It's raw, it's real. People will connect with that." Yet, as the conversation unfolded, a new wave of doubt crashed over her. Was she truly prepared to dissect her mind and expose her fears for others to see? As she committed her thoughts to this new avenue, she envisioned the performance, what it entailed, how her heart would be laid bare. It was exhilarating but fraught with peril. What if they didn't sympathize? What if she crumbled on stage? She had built a delicate armor over the years. Exposing any fragility could shatter that protection. A desire to push through the trepidation against the temptation to retreat battled within her. Hours later, as she returned home, Jessica reflected on the day. It wasn't just about mastering the piano or regaining stage presence. It was dissecting fear and giving voice to her narrative. A dichotomy danced within her, the pull of the familiar silence against the relentless beckoning of her uncensored truth. In those moments of quiet reflection, a thought sparked an electric thrill. Perhaps in revealing the creases of her humanity, she did not only connect with others, but also illuminate her path of self-discovery. As she set her keys down, she reached for her notebook, resolving to solidify her ideas into a tangible form. But as she focused on the blank page before her, anxiety spiraled anew. The question haunted her. Could she truly embrace this journey of personal revelation, or would fear once again carve her into a shadow of her true self? The night thickened around her, amplifying the tension. What awaited in that confrontation between her ambitions and anxieties? The stakes were mounting, and the next step loomed nearer, a challenge echoing in her heart. Who would emerge when she embraced the stories that shaped her? Jessica sat at her kitchen table, notebook open, trembling fingers poised above the blank pages. The stillness of the night wrapped around her like a claustrophobic shroud, amplifying the cacophony of contradicting thoughts in her head. She had made a commitment to herself to confront her fears, yet every moment had evolved into a steep cliff of anxiety. Each direction she could take felt like a tightrope stretched over uncertainty. As her eyes scanned the emptiness of the page, her mind flickered back to Leah's encouragement. If it comes from your heart, it will resonate. Could she really muster the courage to pour her heart out? The concept of transformation was enticing, yet every fiber of her being screamed against diving headlong into vulnerability. Desperation clawed at her, driving her thoughts deeper into her past. There it was, the performance in 4th grade where she had stumbled over her notes, faltered under the scrutinizing gaze of her classmates. The teasing that followed felt like arrows to her already wounded spirit, a narrative seared into her memory. Was that the defining moment? The moment she decided safety lived in silence and conformity? Jessica realized she couldn't escape the past. It molded her, shaped her fears, and stoked her ambitions. But instead of tilting further into regret, what if she flipped the narrative? She could articulate her struggles, showcasing each crack filled with her observations, her pain, and ultimately, her growth. Each misstep was part of a larger journey, one of persistence and resilience. She grabbed the pen, the ink flowing onto the page like her thoughts had been uncorked. Fear of exposure, she scribbled, before lifting the pen again. Anxiety on stage, she added. It was cathartic in a way she hadn't anticipated. Releasing the friction of her internal battle onto the page, as she wrote, images danced through her mind. The applause, the sweet, ephemeral sound that made her fears ghostly. Could she reclaim that once-filled void of a child yearning for affirmation? Embrace the risk amidst doubt? What if she embraced not perfection but the audacity to share a story of evolution? In that moment, a surge of determination swelled within her. If music were to be her medium, it would be shaped by the very uncertainties that had once held her captive. As the clock ticked forward, Jessica envisioned strategically crafting her piece, pairing vulnerability with strength. She didn't merely want a performance. She craved a connection, a raw thread woven through the fabric of her history. What if her audience could rise from their seats, not just through applause but through understanding? But reality crashed back, a tidal wave of doubt crashing against her momentum. Was she prepared to reveal the stories buried beneath layers of self-doubt? Each time she pictured herself on stage, a paralyzing thought emerged: what if they saw her fear and turned away instead of reaching for her story? Grappling with that looming question, Jessica could feel her resolve wavering. She needed more. She needed to prepare, to practice not just the intricacies of her song, but also confront the very fears that haunted its origins. However, did that entail confronting her past? Perhaps reaching out to someone who had been alongside her during those defining moments could offer clarity. Feeling invigorated, she penned a new thought. Reach out to Sarah, the one who sat in the front row that day, the supportive presence in my earliest performances. The clock chimed midnight, and Jessica hesitated, the pen hovering. This was more than just a song, it was a reclamation, a declaration that she was more than her fears. But the path ahead was still cloaked in uncertainty, and with each passing moment, the underlying unsettling question loomed larger. Would she summon the courage to confront those truths, or would fear keep her tethered in twilight? Through the stillness of the night, a decision danced just out of reach. Would she call upon her past, or would it remain a shadow? The next pivotal step pulsated in her veins, gathering force, pushing her towards a confrontation that could redefine everything. Would she dare to embrace it? Morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating Jessica's kitchen with gentle beams that felt almost primordial. The dawn's serenity was a contrast to the storm brewing inside her mind, still grappling with questions that had refused to dissipate. There was a powerful paradox in her resolve and inspiration to create juxtaposed with an insidious fear of failure. How could vulnerability, which she acknowledged as a source of strength, also be the very thing that threatened to paralyze her? After a night filled with relentless tossing and turning, she made a decision. A phone call to Sarah, her childhood friend and the audience member who had cheered the loudest during that fateful performance, could either anchor her in support of history or launch her towards unsettling revelations. The anticipation of speaking to her friend became a fluttering bird in her stomach, simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Jessica picked up her phone and dialed. The call connected, and within rings echoing in her ear, her heartbeat drummed louder. When the familiar voice broke through the static, she felt a potent rush of nostalgia and vulnerability. Jess, wow, it's been forever. How are you? Sarah's voice sparkled with unfiltered enthusiasm, and for a brief moment, Jessica felt buoyed by their shared past. I'm okay. Actually trying to work through some things, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. You remember that performance we did in 4th grade? The one where I bombed? There was a brief silence, a hang in the air that made Jessica's heart race. But Sarah's laughter was gentle, wrapped in warmth. You mean the one where you forgot your lines? You were so adorable up there. I still remember how brave you were, standing there under those lights. It struck Jessica how Sarah's recollection largely focused on courage, a perspective that had been absent in her own memory. As they reminisced, the narrative began to shift. Rather than being a moment of sheer embarrassment, it transformed into an emblem of bravery. Did you ever think about how that performance shaped you? Jessica inquired, her voice gaining strength. I mean, we are where we are today because of our experiences, right? Yes, but you've more than that. You're not defined just by that moment, Jess. You've always grown and evolved. I see it every time I hear you play, Sarah said, her tone imbued with sincerity. Do you think you could ever do that again? The question lingered in the air, tinged with opportunity. Jessica felt a flicker of hope glowing amidst the chaos of her self-doubt. Could she confront the stage that once felt hostile? The thought wasn't merely uplifting, it felt like an invitation to step into her own narrative, rather than remain a bystander. With newfound determination, Jessica decided to meet her fear head-on. She would share her story through music, a retelling of resilience bathed in authenticity. The challenge became less about perfection and more about connection. Can you help me? She asked Sarah, her voice imbued with growing resolve. I want to prepare something that shares my journey, the good and the bad. But I need someone to keep me accountable. Of course, I'm in. We can even pick your strongest pieces and blend them with personal anecdotes. It will work beautifully, Sarah responded, and Jessica sighed in relief, knowing she had someone to rely on, someone who understood. As they mapped out a plan together, Jessica's fear was slowly transformed into a powerful resource fueling her ambitions. No longer standing at the edge of the abyss alone, the once thick fog of anxiety started to lift. She could see paths, vibrant and full of potential, branching out before her. Yet, as enthusiasm bubbled within, another question emerged, clawing at the corner of her mind. Would the weight of her past be too much to bear? Could she balance the truth of her early struggles with the aspirations of her current vision? Meanwhile, the clock ticked steadily, reminding her that time was both an ally and an enemy. The challenge she had embarked upon was just beginning. Brimming with excitement yet shadowed by lurking fears, Jessica closed her notebook, her heart racing with both anticipation and dread. What awaited her at the other end of her revelations? Would the stories she planned to share bridge the gap between her past insecurities and present aspirations? The stakes intensified as she prepared to weave her tale from both shadow and light. The moment was approaching, and each beat of her heart resonated with the pulse of possibility. Would she cement her journey into a melody that could resonate, or would she slip back into silence? The morning sun now hung higher in the sky, casting vibrant patterns of light across Jessica's kitchen as she sat at her table, swirling her coffee absent-mindedly. The shadows of her doubts still lingered, but they felt different today. They were quieter, not entirely gone, but softened by the spark of possibility ignited by her conversation with Sarah. Determined to embrace this momentum, Jessica dived into her notes with renewed vigor. The pages were filled with ideas about the songs she wanted to perform and snippets of the stories behind each piece. Each note she wrote felt like a stepping stone, leading her through the dense thicket of her past towards the open fields of her aspirations. This was not merely a musical performance. It was her chance to unravel the narratives that had trapped her for too long. She envisioned her opening song a poignant melody that intertwined her childhood memories with fragments of her adult self. The music would reflect both the joy and the ache that came with facing one's vulnerabilities. But just as Jessica began to feel the rhythm of her creative process, the familiar voice of self-doubt crept in. Were these songs good enough? Would anyone even care to listen? She slammed her notebook shut in frustration. The noise in her head swelled, drowning out the melodies she sought to create. In that moment of chaos, her phone buzzed, and instinctively, she glanced at the screen. It was a text from Sarah. "Thinking about your performance later. I believe in you. You have so much to share and the world needs to hear it." The warmth of her friend's words wrapped around Jessica like a cocoon. Once again, she felt buoyed by the support that reminded her of her purpose. She responded with a simple, heartfelt thank you, then reopened her notebook, eager to reclaim her focus. To dig deeper, she began writing down her fears alongside her ambitions, a technique Sarah had suggested. A list formed: fear of failure, worry about judgment, doubt in my abilities. Next to each fear, she drafted a corresponding counterpoint. Every artist has faced rejection. My voice is unique and worthy of sharing. Every time I play, I improve. With clarity emerging from the chaos, Jessica decided to invite Sarah over for an impromptu workshop. She needed feedback and needed to feel the energy of someone who saw her potential clearly. The idea of presenting her pieces, raw and unrefined, excited and terrified her in equal measure. As the clock ticked closer to noon, she prepared the space, setting her music sheets neatly on the stand, taking a moment to breathe. Every phrase she rehearsed echoed her commitment to authenticity. This was not just a performance but an unmasking. This was about communication, her story reaching the hearts of others. When Sarah arrived, her friend stepped in with an infectious enthusiasm that filled the room. Jessica found herself grinning despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. "Okay, I want to start with this piece," she announced, her fingers trembling over the keys. The first notes rang out, a combination of vulnerability and courage filling the air. As she played, she recalled the moments of her past that shaped her, letting the emotions wash over her like a tide. Jessica poured not just her notes but her soul into the performance. With each crescendo, she felt the weight of her fears lifting, replaced by the joy of creation. When she finished, Jessica found Sarah staring at her, wide-eyed. "You have to do this. You have something incredible here." The affirmation made Jess's heart swell. Yet that flicker of dread still burned low and slow at the back of her mind. "Do you think I'm really ready?" Jessica asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the question bursting forth from her insecurities. With a firm gaze, Sarah replied, "Ready or not, Jess, you have a voice that deserves to be heard. Don't let fear control your narrative." Jessica felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with anxiety. Was she truly prepared to step onto the stage of her life and share it all? As the afternoon light shifted outside, she wrestled with the decision before her. Should she embrace this newfound momentum and risk it all? Or would she retreat, hiding behind her fears once more? The choice loomed before her, each heartbeat reminding her of the stakes involved. Would she seize the opportunity to tell her story, or let fear dictate her reality? The answer awaited her, pressing and palpable. Jessica stood in front of the mirror, taking in the reflection of someone she barely recognized. The timid girl who had once relegated her dreams to the echoes of an empty room had transformed into a determined woman, ready to seize her destiny. Today wasn't just another day, it was the day she would finally open her heart through the music she had hidden for so long. The auditorium was alive with chatter and anticipation as she arrived, her heart racing alongside the vivid recollections of laughter and sneers from classmates. But those memories, once haunting, now felt like stepping stones rather than roadblocks. She had conquered her fears. Today, she would reveal her journey. As she stepped onto the stage, the soft glow of the lights enveloped her, igniting a flame of confidence within. Gone were the paralyzing doubts that had once stolen her breath. Today, she stood ready not just to perform but to share her story. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of connection from Sarah, who was seated in the front row, her unwavering support a guiding light on this transformative path. The opening notes flowed from her fingers, weaving a tapestry of sound that spoke of vulnerability and strength. Each chord echoed her journey, the heartache of past failures, and the joy of self-acceptance. As she played her heart out, Jessica felt a palpable shift in the atmosphere. No longer looking for validation or fearing judgment, she poured herself into the music, crafting a bridge between her past and her present. With every crescendo, she embraced the vulnerability that once frightened her. The audience leaned forward, wrapped in the emotions she poured into her performance. She shared the story of her fourth-grade mishap, transforming the narrative into a testimony of resilience. Jessica had conquered the shadows of her past to shine brightly in the present. The final notes lingered in the air, a profound silence engulfing the auditorium as she finished. Then, the applause struck like thunder, echoing against the walls as the audience rose to their feet. In that moment, a wave of relief washed over her. She had not only performed, she had beautifully articulated her truth, and they had accepted it wholeheartedly. As Jessica stepped off the stage, the exhilaration of accomplishment filled her heart. She had sought approval and validation, but in embracing her vulnerability, she had found something much more profound: self-acceptance and the courage to be seen. The roar of the applause confirmed the journey she had undertaken, urging her to continue sharing her music. After the performance, Stephen approached her, pride radiating from him. "You've demonstrated incredible growth," he said sincerely. "Your authenticity on that stage was inspiring. You're not just a musician, you've become a storyteller." Jessica's heart soared. His words were a validation she had long craved. She understood now that being vulnerable was not just about exposing herself, but rather about weaving her experiences into a narrative that could resonate with others. Each note she played could evoke emotions, spark connections, and ultimately foster understanding. In the weeks that followed, Jessica continued to hone her craft, generating music centered around her journey, inviting her audience into her world. She formed bonds with fellow artists, each sharing their challenges and triumphs, creating a supportive tapestry woven through shared experience. One evening, as she reflected on her progress, a sense of profound satisfaction settled over her. The little girl hidden beneath self-doubt had emerged, regaining her rightful place as a confident artist. She had achieved what she once thought was unattainable. She had transformed her struggles into a powerful narrative that inspired others. Today, she no longer needed to seek the approval of others. Instead, she was well on her way to becoming a beacon of hope, demonstrating that vulnerability, when embraced, can empower both the artist and the audience. Now, with renewed purpose flowing through her, Jessica stood ready to share her music with even greater conviction. The performance at the auditorium was not an endpoint but a powerful beginning. She had conquered her fears, revealing her true self. She had achieved personal growth, and she would continue to forge ahead, undeterred by the chorus of doubt that had once tried to silence her. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support heartfelt journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible transformation. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this empowering conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread this narrative of resilience.